It's sad Aiden again here. I'm sort of doing like a how to animate type video. And it's like frame by frame animation versus something like tweening or stop motion. I'm gonna be using the app called flipaclip, so there's like a few hints specifically about like how to use that program over others. And it's a free app for mobile devices. So here we go, I guess. It's just like a list of like basic steps and things to do. You need some form of a mobile device, whether it's a phone, a tablet. Use that iPod Touch you probably had back in like first grade, I think. I don't know. I don't know if you can actually get that on there. Don't quote me on that. Flip a clip or another animating program that works is good. And especially you need time and patience. A lot of that. You could do any object, character, shape, or basically just anything. Can make your own characters. Can draw someone else's as long as you give credit and preferably if you have permission. When it comes to animating a character, it's easier to choose a simpler design, a character with a simpler design, because otherwise it's a lot more difficult to draw every single feature, especially with something like frame by frame. Weaning isn't as bad. Not all animation really requires like specific audio to use. You can choose whether you'd like to do just silence or could add something like a song or sound effects or voicing. Okay, and then probably the first thing that you'd want to do before you start like any form of like drawing or anything is to select the FPS or frames per second. The lower it is, the longer each frame will like last when it's played. But the higher it is, the more frames that you have to add, but it also produces smoother animations compared to that of a low frame rate. Okay, the first one starting to work on the project is to sketch. But you make a sketch of what you're gonna animate. Do it in like a lighter color, such as like gray or other like paler, lighter colors. Or use a layer with a lower, how do you say that? Opacity? Frick, I don't. I'm gonna get Google Translate to help me on that one. Or whatever text to speech.
Opacity.
Opacity. Alright, yeah. But yeah, use a layer with a lower opacity. So it'll guide you along a lot better instead of just having unplanned movements that just go along with whatever you're doing. Whatever pops in your head at the moment. You can also check on things like proportions and movements through the sketch, or animatic, or storyboard, whichever you prefer to call it. There's a lot of names for it. For example, say you make like the head like too big, you can change the size and not have to redraw it to fix the like line size, because otherwise like the rest of it will stay the way you drew it and the rest will like the adjusted part will turn like thinner if you make it smaller. Number two, the second step is you do like the beginning of the line art. This will be included in the final video. You will draw over top of your sketch in like more of like clean lines. These lines should be clean and the colors should be darker or more noticeable when on top of the sketch. For example, I did gray sketching. I just kind of died on that one. But I did gray sketching with black line art. The third step is to start doing in-betweens. Not necessarily, I mean, that's where tweening gets its name, because it's more so just doing in-betweens instead of separately drawing each frame. Basically, like, the first thing you should do, like, between the second and third phase, is to erase or hide the sketching from behind the line art, because after you finish your line art, the sketch in the background can cause you to misjudge the previous or next coming frame's lines and could make it appear like very shaky or off. You need to be able to see the previous and or next frames. So, in this stage you would use the onion skin option, depending where that is on your program, which basically allows you to see the frames that are coming before and the frame that comes after. If you're using the unpaid flipaclip or other programs that do not supply one before and one after, check in from time to time between the frames to make sure that the lines aren't too far off. 3.5, just one in the middle. That's a little more optional, is extra in-betweens. It's completely optional, but it makes animations a little smoother. I personally didn't do this because I made a huge mistake while doing it, so I was on a really limited time. It takes a lot more time to do extra in-betweens, and you have to be a little more precise with some of them. The fourth step would be the fun part, the coloring. This one's like the easiest part probably, at least sometimes. Just use the bucket or fill tool and fill in the lines to make sure that you have to make sure that all of your lines connect properly, or else the background will fill with the selected part that you're trying to color. And that is one of the most irritating things. If you don't have a fill tool on your program or it isn't working properly, you can always open a layer behind the line art and color there with the line tool. But that takes a lot more time. And then the fifth step is also kind of more so optional, but it's like extra details. This can involve something like adding still frames to extend the length of like a certain frame. Like you copy and paste the same frame to make it hold on longer. Or fixing coloring issues or adding backgrounds or any of that. If you really have the time and the patience, you can try to add shading. They're usually details that aren't required, and I personally don't do them, but they make your final product look a lot better. I guess the last step is to export, and you can be proud of the beautiful work you made. I think that's about it. Hope I listed everything properly. Knowing me, I probably didn't. More than likely, if this would be your first animation, even just for using something like flipaclip, I mean, you might not be entirely proud. You might just stop and look at it and think, this looks hella weird. That always happens around the first one, and even sometimes after like years of work. I mean, heck, I'll show an example on the screen of, because I was making the video initially for this project, but then I just kind of decided against it because I messed it up. So I made more small ones. So yeah, I guess, hope you enjoyed. Whip dab nay nay, I don't know. Peace, I guess.